Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is DB333, and welcome to Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order, Last Days of Europe. Now, last time we hopped in to good old TNO, we hopped in as the German Reich. We picked Albert Speer as the successor to the Führership. Went through a bloody civil war, which we kind of had to cheat through a little bit, not gonna lie. And we went to go ahead and we went ahead and restored. Well, we didn't quite restore democracy. We gave Germany an actual viable market economy. We got rid of slavery. That whole crutch thing that they had to rely on to win the war in the first place. And we also started the general process of reintroducing democracy to Germany and denazifying Germany, which is very, very important and very nice that we did that. Now, of course, we have to move on to do something else. And I was going to do the USA right off the bat, but my test games haven't been working the best. I still have to figure out how to do a good job as RFK and then still be able to elect Glenn. So I'm putting a bit of a hold on that just temporarily. And I'm doing something that I kind of wanted to do for a bit. I didn't realize I'd be going this far with how I'm doing it, but here we are. So, there's a little nation called Komi. It is basically, I think someone put it very well. I think it was on the Reddit. I forget exactly. If Tomsk is the ideal democratic nation, the idealistic democracy, Komi is the cynical one. They broke off. Political conflict and scheming is reaching a crisis point. It seems the day of democracy are limited. So, Komi is, I think, the only nation I can think of off the top of my head. I might have to scroll out a little bit to look and see. Komi, well, basically the point is Komi can go pretty much any ideology. That's her whole little, niche, basically. So you can go any flavor of communist, any flavor of far right, any flavor of democracy. There's one exception to that. They're going to be adding it in a little bit. I think they said maybe on that one of these upcoming updates. But I won't say what that is just because I'm sure the secret's out already. But if you don't know the secret of which ideology makes a surprise appearance, I'll let you figure that out on your own. You might have to figure out soon though, because I don't know if you have enough time to figure it out. If you catch my drift. So if we hop in to Komi, and I want to make sure I have to scroll down real quick as I tried pre-recording this a little bit already. Yeah, it cuts off a little bit, so I'll have to explain. I'll read this a little bit, and then it'll kind of explain kind of everyone in the game the best I can, because usually and I did a test game before and it did show all this, but for whatever reason, the rest isn't popping up. So devs, fix your game. I'm joking mostly, but it is mildly annoying. So see if there's a fix. The failures of Nikolai Bukharin, the German invasion, and the defeat of the West Russian Revolutionary Front against the German Reich bled the people of Russia far too much, subjecting them to unimaginable horror and destitution for little gain. Rather than the workers' utopia promised by the Soviet government, the communist experiment ended in failure as apocalyptic warfare scorched West Russia for the second time in 2 decades. The former government of the Komi ASSR, a faithful band of Soviet loyalist politicians, gladly went along with Grand Marshal Klement Voroshilov's plan for the restoration of the Soviet government, and Komi, despite the reservations that its highly politically deviant population held, gladly slipped into the pocket of the front until the West Russian War and the transition of the front's capital, Syktyvkar. I heard like a online pronunciation of it. I think that's it. Syktyvkar. The war, the political failures of the front, the final assassination of Alexei Rykov, and the bombing of the Presidium marked the last straw for the Komi government, however. Nikolai Alexeyevich Voznesensky, the newly appointed head of the Komi ASSR, took executive action to declare independence from the front, being aided in his operation by a slew of former front politicians, including Mikhail Andreyevich Suslov, foreign minister of the front, and Andrei Alexandrovich Zandov, a prominent official of the Comintern. With the secession of the Komi ASSR from the front under a new declared republic, and the loss of yet another capital, the political cohesion of the front dissolved, and more separatists ate away at the front's armies before operations could be launched to put down the rebellions and warlords. With the democratic nature of the Komi Republic becoming well known throughout West Russia, and the development of Syktyvkars becoming swollen with refugees from other, less accommodating warlord states, a climate of political radicalism began to fester within the Republic, fed by Voznesensky's collaboration with Zhdanov's communists and the underground influence of extremist politicians who have been set free from the many former gulags in the region. Political violence, grand scheming, and paramilitary activities became commonplace, with the corruption within the Republic's armed forces doing nothing to help matters, despite the efforts of talented officers such as Petro Grigorenko and Ivan Kurokov. So the state of the Republic in 1962 is hardly one conducive to functioning democracy or civilized life. Crime is at a recent high, with constant paramilitary street battles shattering the silence on the streets of Syktyvkar. The plots of shadowy ideologues are constantly pit against each other in the form of assassinations, theft, fraud, assault, extortion, and the conspiracy against the Republic. While power is brokered with the National Assembly and the Democratic Coalition of relatively centrist parties attempt to keep order and sane governance, Mikhail Suslov's Communist Party of Komi on the far left and Lev Gumilov's Passionary Organization on the far right constantly attempt to bring down the government in the shadows while maintaining a respectable public opinion. And so we have a lot of players in this game. We have the center, and if you look at this, you'd think that's it. So we have some regional info. I can go over that more another time. This is more of an intro video anyway, for what I'm doing. So let's go. For the Republic. Destiny lies ahead. So Komi starts off with just this crazy ideology tree. Like, goddamn, that's a lot right there. We have this guy, originally only a middle-level Soviet statesman, Nikolai Alexeyevich Voznesensky, found himself as the only guarantor of democracy, flawed as he is, in a small piece of the former Soviet Union, being remarkable among his peers for extraordinary talents in the economic science and administrative work. Voznesensky was chosen by the Red Army, Svatka, on the eve of the West Russian War, to oversee the recovery mission of the Komi SSR. For his service to the Soviet province, he acquired a considerable popularity among the people of Komi, who saw them as a benevolent statesman wishing to put the benefit of a common man ahead of a bickering, infighting between the cliques. Former president of the Komi SSR. He remains the sole figurehead in the Republic who could boast about the public support, disillusioned with the orthodox Marxist dogma, and remaining bitter about the incompetence and pettiness of these Soviet higher-ups that nearly brought Komi to destruction. He reshaped the political system of the Republic into a representative democracy, where the voice of every man or woman can be heard and will be heard, breaking away with a single-party dictatorship. Although the hard efforts of Voznesensky brought daily bread and a sense of confidence for the average Komi citizens, the reputation of Syktyvkar brought many unsavory people to the city who seek nothing but eliminate the democracy of Komi through her own institutions. But the challenges to him not only come from the extremists, but also from his fellow Democratic politicians who question the capability of him to maintain the Republican values, citing his abrasive and inappropriate behaviors for a man of his position and his embarrassing ties to various socialist groups. However, despite the political pressure, he is not a person who wants to abandon the system he has envisioned without a fight. So we're in a tough situation. We have Luftwaffe terror bombings, which everyone in this region has. A bunch of nasty debuffs. We got Moscovian and the Luftwaffe bombing the shit out of us. And we have a place for all of us. Some buffs, some penalties. The list of ideologies represented among the ruins of Russia is long, yet it still has outcasts and lost ideologues. Those people who cannot find a home among the ruins, those who've been cast out because of ideas too radical or alien, they have come here. As a result, Komi is one of the most diverse political environments on Earth, and also one of the most dangerous ones. Then we have a clash of shadows, some PP, a bunch of general debuffs. The Republic is afflicted by a scourge that makes itself plainly evident if one bothers to look behind the curtains of the various movements occupying Silktivkar. The legion of manipulators, radicals, would-be shadow masters afflict the Republic like a pox. Their influence drives much of Komi's society. The paramilitaries move on their orders, the National Assembly carries out their machinations, and every day democracy spirals towards a final crescendo of clashing plots. And then finally we have the Silktivkar Arsenal, which gives us a little bit of penalties, but some nice core attack and defense. Beneath the city of Silktivkar lies a practical treasure trove of Soviet technology and weaponry. Vats and canisters of lethal revenge weapons were found stored here before the front collapse. They have found new usage amongst the defenders of the Republic. The gas is potent, and the ability to scorch the lanes of our enemies is an effective tool, but those who control the arsenal wield a disproportionate amount of influence. So we have an interesting starting point, without a doubt. And we have a couple figures that we're going to meet soon enough, I'm sure. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to this. And then there's a very important decision that we have to make. And how it's going to be very interesting to see what we end up going with. And I'll explain that as we get to it. Let's start with the minutes of Congress. Another year has passed, and our coalition's Congress has managed to run our republic as well as they can, given our unfortunate situation. However, the cracks are being shown, factionalism within the republic, and even our coalition is growing at an incredible rate. If we are to continue our custodianship of Komi and prevent the radicals from taking power, we must act quickly and decisively to put down our enemies. So we'll start with that, and we'll start getting some general sorts of info about who's who in Komi. So let's get some computing machines. We don't even have basic computers. Yeesh. Alright, so we got some of these guys. Let's go with him. And then we have one good general. That's really about it. All these guys are politically connected. Wow. I mean, Ivan's not the best, but we'll have to go with him because I don't know who else we can go for. The rest of them kind of suck. So for decisions, we have a friend on the left, which ties in with Voznesensky and Zhdanov's little relationship. We can ask Zhdanov to have some call in some favors for us. But he can call in favors for us too. And then we have this whole thing about the power struggle. Then, which I'll get to that in a second. We have looting, which is the same as some of the other LPs we've done, mainly Tomsk. That's the only Russian LP I've done yet, actually. But, well, that's going to change, and I'll explain that in a sec. And then we also have warlord development, and we can also buy equipment from Zlatosk over there. Okay, so the most powerful political faction is the political center. And so we have the most influential figures on all sides. Suslov on the left, Fosnensky in the center, and Gumilov on the right. And so on the right it has Gumilov and Tabaritsky's influence. Yeah, Gumilov is gonna make. I don't know what this Tabaritsky guy's about. He's talking about some Romanov or some shit. I don't know why he's in Vyatka. And then we have a center, Kosygin, Stalina, and Vosnensky. And then to the left we have Suslov, Zdanov, and Bukharina. So we got that figured out. We took a look at that real quick. Let's build 2 civvy factories, and I guess a military factory there. That'll work. And then we have nothing building right now. So we'll go ahead, get some. We'll put 2 on guns and 1 on artillery, and that's the best we can do right now. So we'll do it. And so there are a lot of colorful characters here in Russia, if you cannot tell. At least in Komi. Their whole, like I said, the whole kind of shtick of Komi is that it can go any ideology except for one. If you guys know anything, if you guys have paid attention to TNO memes, you probably know which one that is. You might not know exactly. You keep hearing things about verifying your clock. You probably don't know what that means, and if you don't, I'll let you figure that out on your own. But other than that, there's only one ideology that it can't go. But that means, you know, you have this whole fucking spectrum here of ideologies you can go down. And it can go fucking anywhere. So we're going to go over at least a few of these in this little video. You might have noticed, probably based on what I'm titling it, this isn't part 1 of a series, explicitly stated. This is just like an introduction to Komi. And we'll get into why I'm doing this instead of labeling it as part 1. But first, let's read about the custodian. The workday of Nikolai Vosnensky passed in an unbearable, soul-crushing, yet in no way carefree routine. Only having reached the threshold of the presidential residence with his leisurely step, the president was immediately caught in the intrigues and schemes of the Komi politics, dealing with the chaos that engulfed the newborn republic, the chaos to which he has no less than the radicals he despised. In a short moment of distraction, he could not help but indulge himself in reminiscing about the early days of the republic, the time when everything seemed so easy, so achievable. The applauding crowd, the speech hall, the lowered Soviet flag, the cheering demonstrations for a new era in the Russian democracy looked so vivid and yet so dissonant with his new reality. The idealistic memories of the birth of the Republic were accompanied by the image of Zdanov, a Jesus-faced and smug creature, accompanied by Suslov, the Mephistopheles in flesh, all sitting next to him on the round table and waiting for their share in the newly founded state. He had nothing but contempt for them, but even being charitable to his past actions, he was honest at least to himself about his own role in enabling the communists in their corruption of a young democracy. Perhaps all of it could be done differently. The Republic didn't have to surrender to the communist demands in exchange for the false sense of security. It didn't have to be a welcoming haven for the pitiable scum who found no place for themselves but in Syktyvkar. Whether that could be done is much too late. The past was the past. All that matters was that he had to carry his unenviable burden alone, clumsily maneuvering in the web that enveloped Komi. The sound of gunfire beneath the window helped to sober his reflection, sighing in response to habitual barbarity he grew used to a long time ago. He took a folder in the bosom and put it on his coat. Leaving the residence, he took a long way to his house, to the opposite side of the road, where another street fight occurred. It's still worth it. It has to be. So let's see. Yeah, we got some stuff that increases Zhdanov's influence, which if we want Zhdanov, we can do, which we'll get into what we're doing in a bit, I guess. When we got the Peacemaker, the meeting was mostly going as planned. Alexei Kosygin was discussing the various topics with several of the more right-wing members of the Democratic coalition. Discussion for future cabinet positions went fine, with Kosygin mostly satisfied with the various compromises made. He managed to squeeze in a few more candidates from his own party, the Union of Young Reformers. He discussed upcoming campaign strategies, seeking which districts would have more or less funding from which parties, and working to discuss ways to penetrate some of the more radical districts. However, Kosygin was not surprised when the mention of political radicals derailed the meeting. Those communists are going to tear down all of the revolution we've made in the name of their so-called People's Revolution. Popular my ass, our Democratic coalition is the only thing keeping Komi from falling to wannabe despots, exclaimed one politician, and it seems that many of those present agreed with him. He continued on, and what is Vosnesensky doing, huh? He's cuddling with them. The DSNP are destroying this coalition. I won't stand for it. This could get out of hand. A fracture in the coalition could seriously damage their performance in the elections, allowing the radicals to gain power. Kosygin had to do something. Friends, colleagues, I understand your fears. Truly I do. I myself am wary of Vosnesky's weak stance towards extremism. However, endangering the coalition's unity is not what the Republic needs. We must instead look at our alternatives. Kosygin paused briefly. Vosnesky has led our Republic for some time, and Komi has grown considerably under his leadership despite the bombings. However, Komi, I feel, may need someone new in charge, someone who can truly heal Komi of its most infectious disease. Elections are soon, friends, and we stand for democracy. Do we not? Kosygin had been thinking about the elections a lot recently. The idea of becoming president was becoming more and more seductive. Either way, it seems his colleagues were pleased by his little speech, and it seems disaster had been averted for now. If we wish to see the sun, we must weather the coming storm. So this is introducing us to the center figures. We already know Vosnesensky. We met Kosygin. I apologize to any Russians who are watching this right now, by the way. I clearly don't know how to pronounce this shit, and so I apologize for butchering it. Let's scavenge for some loot. So space race finally been won? I don't know. Svetlana Stalina looked down at the shuffled papers on her desk, and the light flickered once more. She barely noticed, instead running a finger along a neatly written note in one of the margins. Future mayoral candidate? It said, next to a grainy photo of a smiling woman. She nodded to herself. She would be perfect. Another name went down on the list she was assembling. Another person to contact to fund and align. One more for the endless list of personnel that the governing coalition employed to keep the Republic running. She nodded to herself. Oh, and I already read that. God damn it. A thought flickered through her mind, an image of her combined proposals for appointments. What a government that would be. Free of radicals and subversives, free of corruption, and dedicated to the Republic over all else. Men and women who knew, above all, that there was a greater good to work towards. As she placed the list to the side and looked absently at the now cold cup of tea that was sitting forgotten on the other side of her desk, she wondered just how her personal path had ended here. Her transformation from young dedicated party-goer that she resented so much to a dedicated public servant. It didn't matter, she decided. It was merely a matter for the record, to be consigned to a distant memory. As always in personal development and politics, the true important thing to think about was the ends, and now the future. It will all pay off someday. So that's all the main democracy figures, really. Ooh. And that concludes our segment on the night's expected weather and sightings of German planes. Now into what is local news. On to you, Sergey. Thanks, Igor. For those of you just turning in now, this is Radio Free Syktyvkar. Follow Republic's latest news. First on the agenda, we have a scandal involving none other than the president himself. The president was allegedly seen with an unknown young woman entering his apartment and leaving 2 hours later. And will this tie into the last scandal, or should it be counted as a dull thing? Well, as much as I hate to say it, Igor, this is yet another scandal for the president, one with perhaps the potential to be counted among the ranks of the Zhdanov affair. To remind the listeners, Sergey, well, that was the time a few weeks ago when the allegations surfaced of collusion between the president and the far left through the channel of Andrei Zhdanov, chairman of the Communist Party. At least a name we all know who's really in charge here. This one has potential for sure, which we can explain after the break. Remember, this show is brought to you today by the Internationale Street Cinema, the best viewing in town. On to the music. So, looks like we choose right-wing propaganda or quality reporting, and that decreases the center. We'll do this, because for right now, for the purposes of the intro, let's not worry about strengthening. I don't want to weaken the center, because what I'm going to do after I finish this. Ooh. The door swung smoothly to the side as Anatoly crept into the house, slowly letting out a terrified breath. Clutching the pistol at his side, he advanced down the hall, ignoring the quiet chatter of the bodyguards in the other rooms. They wouldn't dare disturb the master while he slept, he hoped, prayed even. As he reached the last door, a plain wooden thing, and wrapped his shaking hand on a knob, Anatoly felt a small smile creep onto his face. This was much easier than expected, wasn't it? All he had to do was shoot an old sleeping man in the head, and it would be done. The Republic would be free of a devil. Anatoly entered the small bedroom, squinting in the dark as he raised his pistol at the dark mass on the bed. The first shot hit Anatoly in the hand, the next in the knee. He squealed in pain as he snapped his gaze towards the darkened corner the shots had come from, nausea rocking his stomach, and met the gaze of his target, sitting comfortably on a leather chair. Come now, Mikhail Suslov's intoned, barely above a whisper. Surely, you didn't think no one's ever attempted to kill me before. Anatoly opened his mouth to speak to jeer the framed shadow master of Komi. All that exited his throat was a whimper. Suslov shook his head. A shame. Usually Gumilov's lambs are made of sterner stuff. He pulled the trigger again, and Anatoly was no more. Suslov stood from his chair, sliding the still-smoking pistol back into its jacket, gaze fixed on his bodyguards, as he burst into the room. Leaving on the steps of the National Assembly, Gumilov hasn't gotten the message yet, it seems. Perhaps another demonstration is in order. So now we're getting into the left side of things. So that's... Before, that was all like various flavors of democracy. Now we're coming up on the left. Suslov, primarily. Next we'll have the last year of the Voznesenskys. Our ruling coalition is headed by the most left-wing Democratic faction, these guys under that guy. Under their guidance, Komi has seen significant improvement, rebuilding from the bombs, lowering the death toll, and attracting refugees to our towns and cities. However, all is not quite well. His ties to the far left, specifically Andrei Zhdanov, are quite alarming and a source of constant discomfort among the more conservative members of the coalition. Time will only tell if they will be able to keep their position at the head of the party, or another wing will take their place. Indeed. So we're building up a more PP. PP game is pretty big, not gonna lie. The Visionary. The winds blew cold through the Komi night as the shadow tramped through the field. The snow crunched beneath his feet until he reached the ideal spot. The night was clear and silent, perfect for his surreptitious observations. He placed the long case in the field, withdrawing the tripod, deftly expanding it and attaching the telescope to the top. His nighttime adventures were a risk, of course. Suslov had expressed concern for his safety, fearing assassination attempts from the Passionari. But even if Comrade Suslov's men did not know of his excursions, how dangerous could it be? Glancing into the telescope, Andrei Zhdanov's mind wandered. Far away from the light of Syktyvkar, that snake pit of intrigue and violence, he found serenity in the gentle movements of the stars. Perhaps out there lay hope. Other beings who overcame their petty infighting and defeat their worst qualities. An example of humanity to follow into a new age. Freedom from want, freedom from conflict, and freedom from ignorance lay within the grasp of humanity. Such a shame that it had been squandered for so long on the petty conflicts of the last decade and the great battle with the backwards, regressive Germany. But soon, his time would come. His vision would guide Russia and the world into a brave new era, and mankind would be free. The way forward lies in our hands. So that's Zhdanov. More of the same. We got Bormann. Okay, we got the Seeker. Svetlana Bukarina smiled cordially for the 5th time at the 5th representative, shook his hand, promised a bright future working together, and stepped away for the 5th time. They never asked her anything about herself, she noticed, only her father. Your father would be so proud, they say, if only he could see you now, to which she'd smile and agree, promising to follow in dear old Nikolai's footsteps. She wasn't so ignorant. This meeting was a productive one, though not for the reasons the rest of the Communist Party thought. It wasn't a mere get-together for her, no. This was a valuable opportunity to learn who the true threats in Komi were, and more importantly, how they could be taken down. The man who just spoken to her, she noticed with some grim satisfaction, was a coward. The second she disagreed with him on a minor dispute, he backed down and apologized thoroughly. Someone like that was a follower, not a leader. Serov had watched her carefully, as expected, a fearsome man for sure, but he hadn't considered that his prey would be watching him just as carefully. What she took the most interest in was a man's apparent disregard for common communist theory. The way he spoke reminded Svetlana what little Nazi propaganda she had suffered through in the past. The party was nearing a breaking point, she concluded at the end of the night. Zhdanov and Suslov, for all their attempts to enforce unity, cannot control everyone. Serov would be the first to go, she reasoned, but certainly not the last. A new rising star in the party would be a welcome sight for many, a reassurance that the glory days of the Union were not all lost. Svetlana Bukarina would be that, but unlike her dear father, she wouldn't let Russia slip through her fingers. A new player enters the game. So up next, I guess we're getting Steve, Minecraft Steve. Yuri Andropov sighed as he lazily tapped the butt of a cigarette against the ashtray, watching with no real interest as the ashes drifted to the bottom of the small glass container. He had another night at the office. The light patter of the rain against the windows drew his eyes to the dark, muggy streets of Syktyvkar outside. He rose to his feet and brought the cigarette to his lips as he surveyed the city. It was quiet tonight. Too quiet for his taste. Sometimes young members of the Communist Party, whispering in each other's ears without caring the world, would comment on Mikhail Suslov's secrecy, his paranoia. The party was a safe place, they'd whine. They were all comrades here, right? Perhaps he could loosen up a bit. Usually, they'd shut up when Yuri tapped them on the shoulder and asked them if he wanted to share their opinions with the class. Then they'd know who the real shadow of the party was. Andropov just snickered at the memory and shook his head. His job wasn't all just scaring dumb kids. It was to do what needed to be done to ensure party stability. Or to disappear whoever had heard Inslav's ire. The latest list of names to investigate Mikhail had given him was, of all things considered, damn boring for the most part. One name, however, got his attention. Svetlana Bukarina. He'd met the kid a few times, he remembered, blowing some smoke out the window. She spoke like Yuri imagined a princess would, all prim and proper, smiled as she shook his hand, the works. It's how he knew she was dangerous. Her father was like that, too, a wonderful man if you were on his good side. But there was a venom behind her eyes. And he saw that behind hers, too. As Yuri watched, a bolt of lightning lit up the city. For a moment, it almost seemed like it was on fire. He wondered then if it was a sign of what Svetlana could do. He shook his head and tossed a cigarette into the ashtray. Just another threat or an unexpected ally? So that's setting up the rest of a laugh. I think there's technically one more figure that they will set up here. Yep, here we are. Ivan Serov watched the streets of Komi from his apartment, a frown creasing his face, and as he watched the sheep mill about below. He hadn't slept well in weeks, and so he had developed this habit of watching the city below, pondering his existence. He was a socialist, he reasoned, always among the most loyal in the entirety of the NKVD, so why did he have so many doubts as of late? He was always proud of Russia, nationalistically so, even, but surely that was merely because of their former status as a great socialist power? It's really not the same way as the Italians or even the Germans. He shook his head. No, he was better than them, wasn't he? But why shouldn't one be devoted to their home above all else? Perhaps the Union wouldn't have fallen if they had fought with the same brutal pride that the Nazis did. Serov felt a churning of doubt within his gut, one that had only intensified over the past weeks. Perhaps he wasn't wrong. Maybe, just maybe, it was Suslov and Zhdanov that were misguided about such questions. Maybe Serov could teach him his new ideas. A smile crossed his face as he considered it. And for the first time in what seemed like years, the churning in his guts lessened. He would lead the Communist Party and Komi with it to greatness. He stormed to his desk, placed a fresh sheet of paper into his typewriter, and began. With this, he would change socialism forever. An innovator or a madman? We'll see when that time comes. So that's... Serov is a very national socialist, if you catch my drift. And so there'll be some stuff there that pops up. The speaker atop the stage smiled warmly at his audience. They'd been so leery, so unreceptive when he was first introduced. Eurasianism had never quite caught on the Republic of Komi, apart from in his own clique. It wasn't that he or his ideas were an unknown quantity in the Republic, quite the opposite. His infamy was likely the reason that the evening of lectures had been boycotted by Komi's leftists and Democrats. And yet, despite everything, he still stood facing a packed theater, one that was conspicuously devoid of hecklers. Often, he said, moving to the end of his lecture, I'm thus interrogated. Lev Nikolaevich, you call yourself a rightist, yet you advocate against the very things that all true rightists stand for. You do not stand for the church, for the supremacy of Russia, for the glory of a czar. What, then, can you possibly offer the people of Russia? The people remained silent, but it was a silence of rapt attention. The speaker continued. People of Syktyvkar, you have heard me speak at length tonight of concepts that I do not expect any of you to grasp. Eurasia, passionarity, the will to change, passionarity. Okay, passionarity. You came here expecting to hear an alternative to the corrupt and inefficient democracy imposed upon us. I will confess that I am more comfortable explaining myself through the written word, but for the benefit of those not similarly inclined, allow me to elucidate my message as clearly as I can. The room remained silent, and the speaker knew he had them. I envision a power to eclipse any that has preceded it. A continent-spanning project wherein the greatest strains of the motherland's ethnicities are forged into an undivisible whole, capitulating only to the singular authority of the state. Not a weary old empire where a single ethnos cease only to stagnate and fall before a mightier foe, but a supranational entity, the summation of all that has come before it. It will not merely be the Russians and their strengths, but the Ukrainians, the Kazakhs, the Mongols, the Buryats, so many more. All of us, inheritors of a combined legacy, standing together under a single banner, the Eurasian state. As the audience exploded into applause that was more than merely respectful, someone leaned over to his friend and asked innocently, "Hey, Pavel, what's the guy's name again?" "Gumelov. Lev Nikolaevich Gumelov." And here comes the right. Ooh. Sasha, still looking for old friends, continued through the woods. She was having some difficulty hearing from one remaining ear, and they were still severe enough that she had not yet caught any prey. Hunger was building. Looking for a safe place to rest for a moment, Sasha found it under the arms of a pine tree. It was only there that she realized she was not alone. Across from her, she could see two men crouched under the deer trail. "We won't find anything to eat if this keeps up, you know," she heard one of them, an older man with a deep voice, say. "Oh. Shut up. I told you I'm no tracker. I'm a farm." Suddenly, she stopped speaking as she saw Sasha out of the corner of her eye and stood still. She met his eyes and saw no malice in them. After a long moment, the young man reached in his pocket, withdrawing several strips of cured meat, which he threw in front of her. Feeling her hunger, Sasha moved to devour them before years of rigid training stopped her in her tracks. "Look at that, Pavel, a trained dog." He laughed as he approached her, with a sound of reminding her of better times. Caressing her neck, he directed her towards the trail, picking up and offering the jerky to her as he did. She quickly ate what was offered and knew what to do next, sniffing the deer trail and looking in the direction of a smell. "See, Pavel? A tracking dog. Lead on." As a command, Sasha cantered into the forest, the humans falling behind. She might not have found her old friends, but at least she had a few new ones. That was enough to make her happy again. Every dog goes to heaven. Igor Shefarovich looked at the window as the sun slowly crept into the room, an uninvited intruder. Candlelight spilled over to his drafting table as its glow lost luster. Shefarovich puffed his lips to blow it out, then stopped. Now was not the time for that. Not when he was approaching completion. He took up his pencil and leaned closer to the drawing board. This particular street was difficult to optimize, and might be better to remove it entirely. Razor in hand, he wiped it off the map. Much better. He adjusted his glasses, discarding the pencil for a pen. He took a step back to see his work in its entirety for the first time since last night. To Shefarovich, it was beautiful. Ordered roads with its sidewalks and pavements, made precisely to accommodate not only the growth of people in Syktyvkar, but also to compensate for its population growth. Everyone in Syktyvkar could get from one point to another in less than an hour's travel time. He put the tip of his pen onto the drawing board. Others of the National Assembly had mocked him before the lines on the two streets intersected. He reached out to his eraser, finding it in his pocket after a few moments of frantic searching. He erased the obstacle, rearranging them to bear each other's weight, one incoming, one outgoing. This proposal might not get anywhere, considering the political nature of the Republic, but the work was its own reward. Now onto the sidewalk and onto this pavement, as he drew in his lines and dotted points along with them. Streetlights. All of this done, Shefarovich decided to test his creation. The walk from his home to the National Assembly was 15 minutes. He picked up his pencil again, tracing it along the new route. In his head, his mind ticked. 2 meters a second, average walking speed, 9, 10. 10 minutes! Now for the next step. Much property destruction would be involved in the realization of his plan, and he laid the original design on top of his. Taking out his notebook, he began to count. Sufficient means. So it sounds like this guy's a fucking nerd, am I right? Got another focus, let's see. A lot of these sort of... One inevitability of Komi's politics is that the status quo would change radically at a moment's notice. The sadness of this factor, however, is that at the moment, the status quo seems to be shifting radically away from the ruling faction, like or not by simple virtue of being the public face of democratic factions of the Republic. Public support has been eroded by scandal after scandal, be they real or constructed by our political enemies. Public support, ever fleeting ephemeral has of late been shifting either to the Suslavite extreme left or the more moderate liberal and conservative factions, those of our coalition partners. As our coalition seems to undergo a period of self-restructuring, it's critical to ensure that the political capital is more or less maintained by the ruling party and that our current president isn't challenged too heavily by our own allies. Whether the solution to this is limiting our most credible coalition partner, simply standing up by and letting our power shrivel away, is entirely up to the whims of the president. So we'll need to accept we'll accept the other factions, boost our popularity a little bit. And we have another little focus. Let's go for our paramilitary reports. Straight from our paramilitary commanders, Petro Grigorenko, comes from the latest observations via eyes of the street. Previous reports have not given us much confidence in our ability to control the ever so important avenues and roadways of the Komi Republic, and this report's no different. More and more, the paramilitaries under the streets of Suslov and Gumanov march onto the streets, controlling warehouses, voting stations, even entire neighborhoods of Syktyvkar, where our forces falter and shrivel in both their control of democratic-aligned districts and the ability to defend what we have left. We must do something about this now before the citizen of Komi cannot turn his or her eye without seeing radicals damaging our democracy. Ooh. A cold wind blew through the creaking old church, sending candlelight dancing across the face of a Theotokos set high upon the altar. Her eyes and those of her child stared down at the supplicant kneeling before them, his lips constantly moving in quiet prayer.
O Heavenly King, the Comforter, the Spirit of Truth, who art everywhere and fillest all things, treasury of blessings and giver of life, come and abide us, and cleanse us from every impurity, and save our souls, O good one.
Sergei Tabaritsky paused and shivered as a frigid draft swept over him, its bite sending chills through his old bones.
Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us. Holy God, holy mighty, holy immortal, have mercy on us.
The cold pressed in, piercing the immaculate old czar's uniform he wore. Its gold collar felt like a manacle of frozen iron around his neck. The fine silk lining did nothing to shield him from winter bite. He grimaced, gritted his teeth, and opened his eyes, lifting his head to stare directly into the eyes of a blessed virgin. In response, he felt the flame of faith roar to life inside him again, driving the cold from his body. He gasped at the sudden intensity of the heat, but stayed perfectly still. There was a presence behind him, a pair of reassuring hands on his shoulders, gentle whispers in his ear. Moisture gathered in his eyes, and he closed them again, recognizing the familiar sensation for what it was.
Keep him safe, O Lord, he uttered, speaking directly to the presence. Watch over our blessed sovereign. Return Bazarvik to us when the time comes. Give me the strength to carry out my sacred task, to defeat your enemies, to restore this land to what it should be. I beg you, stand with me, O Lord, and help me save Holy Russia.
God save Russia. I wonder what that guy's all about. We welcome you back to another special segment. Today we have a very special guest. Please give a warm welcome to John Ryan. That's right, an American. Oh, thank God! I can finally do a American voice for these guys and make sense. Thanks, Sergey. Glad to be on the show. Pleasure's ours, John. Now our listeners are very interested in how you got to our very fine republic. Care to share? Well, I was actually with the CIA as far back as the war. What was that, 6 years ago? Anyway, I decided to stay when they pulled the rest of us out of the front. I quite like this girl named Svetlana. Oh, not one of our Svetlanas, I hope. Oh, no. God, no. Entirely different girl. If you're listening, babe, I love you. Say hi to Anastas for me. Back on track. You said you were with the CIA. How did anything surprise you about the way the front operated? How was life under the Red Giant? You know, for all the credit we give Comrade Suslov for being some sort of genius, the front was clearly a mess. We had all the makings of a tragic tale. Generals infighting, shoddy equipment. We backed the wrong course in that fight, let me tell ya. We should have been there for the Siberians back in the day. Instead, we chose the Reds and suffered for it. An excellent analysis by John Ryan, ex-CIA agent and proud citizen of our republic. We'll be back in a moment after the break. Interesting stuff. So, we'll do new agricultural methods. I always find that's a better one to do. This is going on for a bit. So I want to get through all the introductions. I'm counting down everyone in my head. I think that honestly might be everyone. So I guess I should explain what I'm doing here then. And if I am missing anyone, I'm going to apologize. Oh, we got Komi, Tabby, Kostin, and Stelina. Yeah, we should have all of them. Yeah. That's all of them. Suslov, Tabertsky, all of them. So, I posted a poll video a while back. And the way I kind of framed that, which at the time that was kind of what I was going to do. I was going to use that to decide which one Komi series I was going to do. Because there's like fucking 9 paths for Komi. And I was going to do one of them. I won't say which one that is because I still might do it. And I don't want to spoil anything. Time's ticking on whether I will decide to do that. I'll say that much. But I realized, shit, there's a lot to do with Komi. There's a lot of paths, a lot of different stuff to do. And so, with all that in mind, I figured, why do only one? Because I split the poll up in like 3 different parts. My original idea is like I had far left, center, far right. I was going to assemble like the best out of all those, and just do like a best of poll and just figure out from there. But I figured, why do that when I can just do 3 different series, like the different aspects of Komi? So, I'm doing that. I decided. So, consider this part 0, I guess, of 3 different series. We're going to be playing... I still have to wait for the polls, and I guess if it changes, I might do something different. But right now, like for the left, Bukarina is massively ahead, so we're probably going to go with her. The center, there's not a clear winner, so I might just do my executive decision and pick one of them, which I won't tell you which, because that's probably the one I'm recording right after. And the right, there's one guy who's winning, but I did some research just to see if anyone else is doing this sort of Komi series, and all the Komi series I saw were of the one path I was thinking of going. And so I might do another executive decision or just go with a second most popular. There. But yeah, so you're not getting 1, not 2, not 4, but 3 different Komi series. Actually, maybe 4 eventually, because I do want to do the one path eventually, just because of how fucked up it gets. But yeah, needless to say, it'll get interesting. So this has been going on for a bit. I went on for a little bit longer than I probably should have, just because that one screen didn't pop up. And so I wanted to introduce everyone to you guys. So I think that should be all the different factions. And there are probably going to be like a few more politicians, like minor guys, but those are all the main leaders. You have Stalina, Tabby, Shefarovic, Gumalov, Serov will be here eventually, Suslov, Zdanov, and Bukharina, Vosnensensky, Kosygin. You have all those guys. Those are all the heads that can be involved. And so we'll make, I guess in the next episode, which I'll probably do the center first because I already have the thumbnails made for those. And then I'll get working on the left series eventually. And then I don't know which right series I'm doing. I'll let the polls figure that out, but we'll get to that eventually. So yeah, that's my little announcement. I mean, we haven't hit 700 subscribers by the time this video's up. We will shortly after, because I'm at like 696, something like that. And so I figured, you know what? There's a lot of TNO I want to cover. I'm gonna do more of a push to cover more of it. So here we go. So yeah, these videos were going up eventually. I don't know how much time I'll have because in theory I have work, but in theory there's gonna be a power outage. So if that's the case, I have a generator that I can use to help run power, and so I might do work. Or I might do other stuff on the internet, but if the internet's out, I have nothing else to do, so I'll record that. Then it'll all be determined probably tomorrow. I'll start recording tomorrow. We'll figure it out then. But yeah, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you for watching, as always. If you like this video, leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to watch these series as they come out, go ahead and check out. Hit that subscribe button. Notification bell, all of that shit, because like I said, I read all the comments. Fuck, I'm too tired to do this. Goddamn, it's 3:15 a.m. and I have a quiz that I should have probably done. I should have done a while ago. Whatever. Yeah, keep updated all the videos. We have like a Bukharina center. Not eventually a Tabby one, but that's probably not the one that's not the one I'm gonna do right off the bat. Maybe Serov, because I know he was leading last time I checked, other than Tabby. And then yeah, eventually Tabby. We'll see. So if you want to keep up with all those series, I also do like random stuff. Like right now for Halloween, I'm doing a Doki Doki. Eventually, I'm gonna do GTA 5. Just different sort of games to keep things interesting. If you're interested in that, hit that sub button. If you want to chat or play games, I have a Discord. If you want to send a few bucks my way monthly, I have a Patreon. And if you just want to have a nice time and watch me do this sort of stuff live, I have a Twitch down link below. So yeah, that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you as always for watching. My name has been DB333, and I'll see you guys, next time? Yeah, with a new series. So yeah, see you guys. Goodbye.